let's dive into one of the most incredible stories in all of history, Alexander of Macedon. In just a little over a decade, this one man carved out one of the largest empires the ancient world had ever seen. And his actions, well, they would echo for centuries to come. And that quote really gets to the heart of it. It doesn't matter if you see him as a hero or a villain, and people have seen him as both. His campaign was a turning point that completely reshaped the world. His story isn't just about epic battles. It's about what happens when cultures collide and a whole new era is born from the chaos. And this slide, right here, captures the whole contradiction of his legacy perfectly. To the west, he's Alexander the Great, this brilliant, heroic conqueror. But if you look at it from the Persian perspective, he was Alexander the Accursed, a ruthless destroyer of their civilization. So how on earth did one man earn both of those titles? Okay, so to really get Alexander, you have to understand the world he was born into. And maybe even more importantly, you have to understand his father, the man who forged the very tools Alexander would use to build his empire. You see, before Alexander came along, Macedonia was kind of a joke to the rest of Greece. They were seen as a backwater, the Hicks of the Greek world, compared to sophisticated city-states like Athens. But his father, Philip II, was an absolute military genius. He's the one who turned this underdog kingdom into a powerhouse with a totally revolutionary army. And the weapon that made it all possible? The sarissa. This thing was a beast. We're talking about an 18-foot-long pike. That's more than twice as long as the spears everyone else was using. It just completely outranged his rivals and gave him this devastating advantage on the battlefield. And here's how they used it. Philip drilled his soldiers relentlessly to fight in this tight formation called the phalanx. Just try to imagine it, a solid wall of iron spear tips 16 rows deep just marching steadily towards you. It was terrifying and pretty much unbeatable. It's how Philip brought all of Greece under his control. But then, right on the verge of launching his massive invasion of Persia, Philip was assassinated. And just like that, at only 20 years old, Alexander inherits everything: the throne, this incredible army, and his father's master plan. The pressure must have been immense, but Alexander was more than ready. So this kicks off the main event, a 10-year whirlwind of conquest against the absolute superpower of the age, the Persian Empire. This is where the legend of Alexander the Great was really forged. From his very first big battle, Alexander showed everyone what kind of leader he was. He was fearless, maybe even a little reckless. He didn't command from the back. No, he personally led the cavalry charge, plunging right into the thick of the fight. In fact, he was almost killed right then and there, and was only saved by his general, Clitus the Black. Remember that name? Well, word of his terrifying ferocity started to spread. At the next major battle, at Issus, he came face to face with the great king of Persia himself, Darius III. And as Alexander and his cavalry charged directly at him, Darius, the most powerful man in the world, literally turned his chariot around and fled, leaving his army and even his own family behind. But look, Alexander wasn't just some brave brawler. He was a brilliant tactician. At Gaugamela, the final showdown, he was massively outnumbered. So what did he do? His strategy was just pure genius. He moved his flank way out to the right, basically baiting the Persians into stretching out their line to match him. This created a tiny gap in their center, and at the perfect moment, bam, he led a wedge-shaped charge straight through it, making a beeline for Darius once again. Darius fled, and that single decisive move won Alexander the battle and the Persian Empire. But winning, it changed him. After conquering Persia, Alexander the general had to become Alexander the king. And for many of his own men, this was the dark, troubling transformation. You see, Alexander started to see himself as the new king of Persia, not just a Macedonian conqueror. He began wearing their clothes, adopting their court rituals. And to his tough, battle-hardened Macedonian veterans, all this seemed soft. It felt foreign, and honestly, deeply offensive. The culture clash was brewing, and it was immense. And his descent into what many saw as tyranny happened fast. He executed a respected commander, Philotas, just on the suspicion of a plot. Then, in a drunken rage, he murdered Clitus the Black, yes, the very man who had saved his life at Granicus. He even started demanding that his Greek soldiers perform proskinesis, basically prostrating themselves before him, an act they believed was reserved only for the gods. His paranoia and arrogance were just spiraling out of control. The breaking point finally came in India. Alexander wanted to keep pushing east to what he thought was the very edge of the world. But his army, they were done. After 8 years of non-stop marching and fighting, they finally put their foot down. They refused to go any further. For the first time, Alexander's ambition wasn't stopped by an enemy army, but by his own men. Forced to turn back, Alexander began the work of trying to consolidate this huge new empire. But what he would soon discover is that an empire forged so quickly by one man's will was incredibly fragile without him holding it all together. Shortly after he got back to Babylon, while he was already planning his next campaign, Alexander got sick with a fever and died. He was just 32 years old. Think about that. After conquering the known world without ever losing a battle, his incredible story just comes to this shockingly abrupt end. And what came next was pure chaos. He hadn't named a successor, so his top generals, known as the successors, immediately started fighting each other for a piece of the pie. In the brutal wars that followed, his wife and his young son were murdered. The empire he built was literally torn to pieces almost overnight. So if the empire itself fell apart, what was his real legacy? Well, this is the most important part. His true lasting impact wasn't political. It was cultural. He accidentally unleashed this cultural explosion. The spread of Greek language, philosophy, and art across this huge area created a new hybrid civilization we call Hellenistic. You get Greek-style statues of the Buddha in Afghanistan, and the city he founded, Alexandria in Egypt, becomes the intellectual capital of the entire Greek-speaking world. This fusion of East and West would define the world for the next 300 years and deeply influence the rise of Rome. And that brings us right back to where we started. His military genius is undeniable, but so was his capacity for brutality and paranoia. He was a liberator to some and a destroyer to others. So what do you think? Was Alexander truly great, or was he something far more complicated?